China is the moderator. You're not? You're part of the panel? Oh, but you have something to say. Always good to hear from you.
Thank you, Kyan. So I actually just want to call the moderator on stage, Ms. Kyra Kyles. Are you with us? Ms. Kyra? Okay, so we'll call the panelists on board. Jessica Santana. Woo! Aaron Limonthas. Rebecca Garcia. Dori Alexandre. All right, so thank you guys for joining us on this panel. So we're missing our moderator, so I guess I'll just take it from here.
Check, check, check.
So you guys play a different role in the ecosystem and very focused on diversity in tech. Can you share a little bit about your background and the specificity of how you are driving inclusion and diversity and breaking boundaries?
Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca Garcia. I'm a program manager at Microsoft and the co-founder of a nonprofit called Coder Dojo NYC, where we teach kids to code. My background in STEM and STEM education is I'm a self-taught developer. And I wanted to give back those technology skills to youth and especially underrepresented groups, including women and youth. And I really see diversity as not just a quota, but I see diversity as a mindset of being able to have people from different backgrounds in the same room to produce the best ideas. And I'm really excited to talk more about that work.
Hi everyone, my name is Jessica Santana and I'm one of the co-founders of an organization called New York on Tech. New York on Tech partners with technology companies to provide education, training, and internships to under-resourced high school students in New York City. Prior to my work with New York on Tech, I was a technologist at Deloitte and at Accenture. And in that time, I learned that innovation shouldn't be something that's exclusive. And I think that is what led us to co-founding the organization in 2014. We currently partner with 36 high schools in New York City, and we've won various awards for our work in making sure that education and technology education is accessible to all.
Check. Was it afternoon? Bonsoir. Bonsoir, everyone. My name is Aaron Limonthas, Haitian American from Houston, Texas. So that means a couple things. One, you're going to hear a lot about GOAT, and you're going to hear about football, and not the football that you're used to, football de American. So in terms of what I do, well, more so the problem that I solve is I enable corporations and companies to attract and retain diverse talent, great diverse talent through inclusion initiatives. And so that branches through numerous different things from, implementing ERGs or employee resource groups, but then also external events around recruiting and things of that nature. So definitely excited to be here, excited to share my insights and learn from you all as well.
Hi everyone. My name is Dori Alexandre. I am from Google. I'm on the diversity and inclusion team, more specifically the incubator pod. In our pod, what we do is to try to create equity in the tech landscape. And that might sound really grandiose and out there, but that's somewhat what we do at Google. We try to set really big goals that may seem like you can't really achieve them, but if you try, you might fail. But if you succeed, then you get much closer to the actual solving of the problem. So on our team, we do many, many, many things. More specifically, our pod is tasked with thinking outside the box on how to solve the challenges that we see on diversity and inclusion, not just at Google, but in tech in general. So we research, We create new ideas, we pilot things internally to see if they will work. We actually also pilot things externally to see if they will work. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but that's like part of it, right? It's just trying something different that no one has tried yet. Because we realize that solutions that may have worked in other industries, a lot of it we can take and use at Google, but some other things we'll have to solve ourselves. So we're just tasked with creating that.
Thank you. So, Aaron, this question is for you. How did you find yourself sort of attracted to the topic of diversity and inclusion? What sort of drew you in, and what is your personal mission around that topic?
Thank you for the question. In terms of what attracted me to it, I think for me is I've always been about inclusion. So how can we make any space that we're in the most accepting and welcoming place for all of us? I'm naturally an introvert, so I tend to kind of stay off in the corner by myself. And so for me, it's always been about, if you're not extroverted, how can this still be a welcoming space for you? And so taking that into corporate America, for me, it was all about, for one, I have a sales background, so no is never an answer for me. With that, I learned that we all have a certain intrinsic value that we bring to a corporation, whatever that may be. And learning to capitalize on your value can really take you different places. So knowing that you as a woman, you have a certain value. You as, from the Caribbean, you as first generation, you as an immigrant, either way, you come into this space, this corporate space with a value. So how do you capitalize on that and use what you know and that knowledge and that diversity of thought to push your company to do a lot more? And once I knew that I had an avenue for that and companies were looking for that, it was like, okay, let's make money from it, if that makes sense.
Definitely, definitely. Now, Dori, you live in Silicon Valley, so you're immersed in the Silicon Valley juices. But every day you see a disparity in the tech ecosystem when it comes to the faces that you're seeing every day, the genders that you're seeing every day. Can you share a little bit about your experience in that space and what you've seen?
Well, first of all, I live in Oakland, California for a reason, okay? Well, one, I try to go close to my people, right? So just living in Oakland, I was like, I'm not living down in Mountain View. I'm not living in San Francisco. I need to be close to my people so that we can, when I need a little pick me up, they give it to me. So that's one. That's my experience there has been about just, it's been interesting, right? I moved to the Bay. I didn't know anyone. So I had one cousin out there that I called to say, hey, I'm moving out there. Can I sleep on your couch? So it was totally new experience for me. I'd come from DC, which was very formal sort of place about networking in a completely different way. So just getting there for me was shocking and different, but at the same time, it was an opportunity to learn completely new things. It's like the life there is completely different. You have to test it out and try it out for yourself to really know. So getting to a place like Google and seeing the numbers, but I think what's great about it is we have the Black Google Network and we're really, really close, and we do a lot of things together. Every year we have outreach trip. Everyone goes and volunteers together somewhere that's meaningful to us. So I stay really close to my roots, to my people, to my Haitians at Google. We have 20 Haitians at Google. Some of them are here right now. So that's how I stay grounded. And so there are the challenges, which we can talk about, of course, but my experience there has been to make sure I get through it, to just stay close to what I know best and what I love, which is being close to my Black people.
Thank you. Now, for the two women over here, Jessica and Rebecca, you have experienced technology in a specific way. Women experience technology in a very different way than men do. Can you share a little bit about what technology represents to you? For us, it's a tool, but from the ecosystem perspective, it's an enabler, it's a driver, it's a weapon for scaling things. What does that mean in your landscape and in what you're doing?
So for me, technology, I think, spans, as we mentioned, many different parts of the ecosystem, but I've been fortunate to be involved in both K through 12 education at a young age, and then also now adult education with people who don't have access to technology education and skills. And really they're getting a second chance at being able to use it for their careers, for their passions. And I think that's the biggest thing when I think about diversity in technology education, is that tech is a skill that is useful to anyone regardless of what you want to become, whether you want to become a writer, a designer, photographer, using technology to your advantage. And for me personally, growing up, I didn't see other Latinas, who were coding. I didn't see other people who worked in technology from diverse backgrounds. And I wanted to give back to the community and give access to this type of education. So the work that I do at Microsoft, I manage a program, full-time technical training program for New Yorkers for them to become IT professionals. And so for them, it's not just about those skills, but it's also the livelihood of their families and their communities, and helping to change that.
Yeah, it's very similar. I mean, I think it's important to point out, and this is a very U.S. perspective, by 2020, there'll be about 1.4 million jobs, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the United States predicts that about 70% of these positions will go unfilled. And what we need to realize is that these positions have the opportunity to drastically shift economic mobility for low-income people, and specifically women and people of color. When I think about the students in the New York on Tech program, I see them as the next Mark Zuckerberg. I think innovation can come from everywhere, but unfortunately, it's not accessible. There's not a lot of computer science education in the classrooms, and even on top of that, we know that social capital is equally as important to having the skills, because 40% of jobs are actually accessed through people and their networks. And if you're living in Brooklyn, New York, or you're living in an under-resourced school, or you're first gen in your family to ever even pursue a career in technology, how could you ever envision what you cannot see? Or how can you ever find or identify role models if you have never ever in your life met a technologist and all you've been doing is learning how to code by yourself online? And so embedded in our programs is the theory that technology is not just this tool for disruption. While I think that companies like Uber are amazing and Lyft are amazing and they're disrupted transportation, XYZ and ABZ, I also think that technology and technology education is a vehicle to make sure that we're empowering communities that historically have been disadvantaged.
Thank you. So I want to give a little visual of the panel right now. There's a paradox. There's a man sitting in the middle and two women on both sides. There's two ways of seeing this.
I'm lucky.
That's a third way, actually. Before I disclose my paradox, I would like each of you to share your own perspective of how this is set up right now. How do you see this? I'll give my first paradox. The women have overpowered the men in the room. We have more women on the table than we have men. That's one perspective. Aaron, how are you seeing this setup?
Well, just to take your piece a little bit further, I think it's interesting in the entire corporate space. When we look at education-wise, women are graduating at a faster rate and attaining more degrees than men. When we look at from a, I don't know how you call it, but look at the panel here, we look at the audience here, it's dominated heavily by women. However, when we look at the pay scale, when we look at the corner offices, it's the complete opposite. And so that's what I'm interested in changing and disrupting, if you will. It's like, how do we alternate that? How do we open more positions up for women? How do we make the corporate space a lot more inclusive, where we're, lunch table or water cooler talk isn't all about football and soccer and everything else, but it's more inclusive from social, but then also from a financial aspect of it.
I'll keep it quick. I think the thing that I see is that maybe the women are doing the diversity and inclusion work more than the men are. You know, and when I think in terms of leadership in diversity and inclusion in tech specifically, there definitely are more women at the top doing the work. So I think it's kind of like a call to action maybe for the men to just, you know, help us out there, you know. There's a lot of work to be done and, you know, step up as well.
I think just to add to that, I think the word inclusion is perfectly describes it, is that diversity, diversity is, there's a really great quote about diversity, is that diversity is being invited to the party, but inclusion is being asked to dance. And so I think we can't talk about diversity and inclusion without including men in the conversation, especially because it's not just the women who need to be educated about diversity or, you know, people of color and minorities. It's the people who make up the majority as well, and so that they can understand and also get a sense of what it feels like to be on the other side of the table, of feeling like I'm the only person like myself at the table. So.
So I'm going to play a little devil's advocate a little bit because I do work with young black and brown men, right? And when you think about intersectionality, even though as a male, right, your presence is more dominated, I want to point out that as a male of color, there aren't a lot of you either in the technical field, but you do have a lot of organizations at the community level trying to solve that problem too. So I don't want to take away from women being in the spotlight because let's be clear, we've been doing the work, right? But I think it's also important to point out that you know, men of color have also been vastly underrepresented in technology, both at the technical and non-technical level, and you can see that in the stats. However, in this paradox here, I think it's important to point out that women have always carried the work, and I think I'm erring on the side of Dori when she says that, because at the community level, I'm thinking historically you have people like Ella Baker and Rosa Parks, and I don't want to get all civil rights movement because that's very U.S. focused, like I mentioned before. But women have been doing the work, and maybe it's time for our men to join us along the way.
I have a quick question for him. Did you notice that you were the only male on the panel?
When I saw the list of panelists, I noticed, and I think, kind of piggyback off the point you just made, I think it's an initiative that we all have to take serious. I think at the end of the day, more women study the social sciences, more women study the soft sciences, so by nature, women care a little bit more. I also think it's, some science mixed into that. But at the same time, I think we also have to make it an open space for everyone. Because a lot of times in cases where I see when I come in and implement a program, white men feel excluded. They don't feel like diversity necessarily relates to them. So at the end of the day, we have to understand our audience. In the tech field, it's dominated by white males. So understanding what matters to them, at the end of the day, most of the time is money. So whatever you're positioning, whatever event that you're proposing, my big suggestion is to figure out how do we turn that into dollar signs for them, because that's how they understand. When we depart from this place, my challenge is for everyone to, have a write-up on not only the people that are here, but really take an onus as if this was the event, like you're Christine, like you put this together, have a proposal, because there's a wealth of knowledge here, there's a wealth of opportunity for you to go back to your own individual company and get more financial support for next year's event, to get more resources in terms of people and bodies here from your representative companies. And you can bring that to then again attract more talent that's not just, black men or black women or Hispanic women, but, a range of diversity here. So that's my challenge to the audience, is to how do you frame this event to benefit you personally in the work that you do?
Thank you. So this is my last question. In a nascent ecosystem like Haiti's, where unconscious biases might potentially impact the speed at which the ecosystem develops, what is a bit of advice that you can give to stakeholders within the ecosystem to be aware of, so that they can begin implementing initiatives or just mindfully playing a role within the ecosystem to prevent any sort of unconscious bias slowing down the growth of the ecosystem? That was a little heavy loaded. Dori, you want to start us off with that?
Yeah, I'm thinking. Sure. So I have an example. So I remember when I first started at Google, I would be in meetings with my manager, and she's a white lady. And we'd be in the meeting together, and when we would leave the meeting, she'd be like, Dori, you didn't speak up, or Dori, you didn't say anything, which I thought was interesting because now that I look back at it, I think about my education. I grew up in Haiti and went to school in Haiti, and how here we value like authority. We respect authority here a lot. So if you're a police officer, if you have a higher title than me, then I wait for you to speak, or I try not to interrupt you. And also, but in the tech space, that might be seen differently. So if you're in a room and you're not speaking, it's not because you're listening, or it's not because you're being respectful. It's being seen as you don't have ideas, right? And that might affect your performance. So I just think it's something to keep in mind. I'm not saying to change who we are, because actually I'm very much like the tech industry needs to learn that there are different cultures out there, and not everybody's like super like assertive and like gonna speak back to their bosses, and and always have be the loudest voice in the room. So I think there's needs to be like a mutual actually understanding that people come from different backgrounds and have different cultures, and we need to better understand what that means when everyone's in the room and working together, to not make assumptions that just because someone is not doing something the way we're used to it means something in our culture that's negative, because that's not always the case. So I think just being mindful in general that there are different dynamics that play out all the time.
Awesome. Check. On that same note, I think unconscious bias is very interesting because we all deal with it. We all have some level of unconscious bias. Something that Christine said in the last segment is, not introducing yourself with your title or, where you work, et cetera. So pretty much probably half the audience doesn't know where I work or what I do, because there's a level of unconscious bias. If I tell you that I went to Dartmouth, you assume, okay, he's probably smart. If I tell you that I work for Dropbox, you're probably going to ask me for free space or something like that. But there's a level of assumption that comes with all of that. And as soon as I walk on stage, as soon as I walk into an interview room or wherever the case may be, we're going to assume something. So understanding that from a corporate space is, I think, first, like if you're dealing with addiction or anything else, the first thing is acceptance and acknowledging the fact that you have this in place. So I think from a corporate perspective, there has to be some level of unconscious bias training just to, as an individual, understand where you are, how you view the world, so then you can act against that, if you will. There's always going to be some more degrees to that, but at the same time, I think just because you have a bias doesn't mean that's a negative thing. I just think you need to be aware of it so that you understand what lens you're looking at individuals and how you move forward from that. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Did you want to contribute your perspective, your advice?
Yeah, for sure. So from an unconscious bias level, I think, like Aaron said, we all have it, right? Like, I'd be lying if I'm sitting here as a diversity and inclusion specialist telling you, like, yeah, I figured everything out. I absolutely have not. I don't think any of us here have, right? And to sit here and provide strategies, know that even in these strategies that we might provide you, there might be some level of unconscious bias there as well. But I think from a practical perspective, think about the universities you're going to recruit from. Think about where you can find talent. Think about how you can diversify the way that you source talent into and even out of your organizations, how you retain alumni of your organizations. Once somebody leaves, it doesn't mean that there isn't a business opportunity for that later on down in the future when they become an employee at another organization. I think that from a trainings perspective, I think early identification of talent pipelines is important, and investing in K through 12 initiatives, but I think it's equally as important to be investing in middle managers so that they can one day become the executive level, the C-suite level people within the companies that they're currently working in. I think that it's also equally important to listen to your users. We're in tech, right? We would never create or design products and services that our users do not want. So when you treat your employees as users and you actually survey them and you listen to what they're saying, then they will eventually tell you how to find the people that look like them, that represent them. And make it a lot easier for you to be able to access these communities as well. And last but not least, I think that the global goal is to think about diversity and inclusion and how to make it innovative and how to make it accessible to everyone for spaces of innovation. But I also think global, but always make sure that your strategies are local, because each and every one of us have very, very, very different needs. What Latinos need are different from what Blacks need, different from what first gens need, different from what people from LGBTQA backgrounds need. And though I know that that sounds like a lot, it's very, very important, especially to the people that you eventually want to hire.
So I think that there are two major things that I would like to give and for people to take away, whether you are an entrepreneur and are looking to hire diverse people into your company, or you yourself are facing the dilemma of being a diverse person or looking for diverse culture in a company. Two of the things that I would say is for people who are hiring especially, and for people from diverse backgrounds, is to really measure success by your skills and your actions over titles. I think that's one big thing that I'm noticing is that, look at candidates from a whole different perspective and yourself, that no matter what background you're coming from, you have skills that matter. And the second thing I think that all of us can do is to pay attention to our privilege of technology education or skills, in terms of there's a small thing the Recurse Center calls isms. And so it's kind of assuming a certain level of knowledge for different people and sort of saying, oh, you haven't heard of this software or this technology, or, oh, I work for this big company, you've never heard of them, kind of not recognizing that people don't all have the same foundational knowledge that you do. And I think that those two things are really important.
Thank you. And I think just to wrap up the panel, diversity and inclusion, we still have a long way to go. But I think we've also come a very long way. And I want to thank each of you for being champions in that space and helping to create a world that is more united. Thank you very much.